Today, I'm gonna take you through a simple water change on the Llama's Lagoon. What is up, coral people? My name is Remy, and if you're new here, this is the Bahama Llama Coral YouTube channel. If you could, please support the channel by liking, subscribing, and hitting that bell notification so you know whenever I upload new videos. Right off the top, this hasn't been an awesome week personally for me. Full disclosure, if you don't know, I'm in the radio industry. I do an afternoon show in St. Louis, and the radio industry has been hit pretty hard, much like a lot of businesses right now during this pandemic. Ad revenue is down across the industry, and that's pretty much our bread and butter. With no advertisers at the moment, a lot of radio stations are strapped for cash, and to alleviate that financial burden, they've done what a lot of companies across the world have decided to do, and that is lay people off. My co-host and I were spared, and we are beyond grateful to still have a job, but a lot of our coworkers are not in that same boat. And that includes the morning show that was on our station. And unfortunately, there's been some backlash, and people have taken their frustrations out on my co-host and I. Look, we realize it is hard for a lot of people right now. Trust me, I know exactly what it's like, because it happened to us in Chicago. You go into work one day, and then hours later, they're like, hey, you don't have a job anymore. So amidst all of this chaos that's been going on across the industry and in our company nationwide, we have been asked to go to mornings. We are not prepared for that. We've done mornings in the past, so we kind of have an idea of how that all runs, but we're not prepared to go to mornings. But I will say my schedule will drastically change. Instead of waking up at like 7 or 8 a.m., now it's going to be like waking up at 3:30 to 4 a.m. So that may have an effect on my upload schedule. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to fit into place, but go ahead and bear with me for a couple weeks if you could. So why am I telling you all this? My personal life story, what's going on in my life right now. Well, my reef tanks have played a role in all of this. It's honestly been like therapy for me to be able to do maintenance on the tanks and kind of lose myself just in viewing the beauty that is in these little ecosystems that we keep. In my mind, reef tanks, they put us in the present. We're not worried about the past. We're not worried about the future. We're just hanging out. It's us and these living organisms that we care for on a daily basis. At the end of the day, no matter what's going on in the world, enjoy your reef tank as much as possible the next several weeks, and I hope that you also find some sort of therapy when it comes to your reef tanks and your reefing hobby. All right, let's turn up the positivity knob a little bit, and we'll talk about water changes. Today, we're gonna do a water change on the Llama's Lagoon. I'm aware that water change videos aren't for everyone, especially if you're intermediate or expert level reef keepers. You don't need to know how to do a water change, you already know. But I was thinking the other day, what are some of the videos that I wanted when I was first getting into the hobby? I definitely came to YouTube and used it as a tool to research on how to do water changes and, regular maintenance stuff when it came to my reef tanks. So this whole thing starts with water. Here is my RODI system. This was by far one of the best purchases I made in the hobby when I was first getting in to a fish-only system in Chicago, Tank It Easy. They were the ones that installed it and custom made the stand and all of that. And they suggested heavily that I have an RODI system in the basement, so we went ahead and installed it. Best decision of my life. I know a lot of people in this hobby rely on the local fish store for RODI and saltwater, but I just can't imagine not being able to make it at home. Zero TDS water is essential to a great reef tank. All right, so I've got my 20-gallon brute bucket right here, and we're gonna go ahead and mix this in. I do wanna make mention of the pump that I have in here, which is just an old circulation pump that I have. This is pretty typical. If you're making water at home, you wanna have some sort of circulation pump to keep the water going, rotating, mixing. If you're making a small batch, maybe just 5 gallons or so, you can mix it yourself, every 5-10 minutes or whatever until it's totally dissolved, but that's kind of a pain. So if you can get yourself a circulation pump, maybe a cheap one off of Amazon, that'll keep the water circulating as you dump in the salt. Also, another thing to think about is an extra heater. This is a luxury too, but it's always good to have that water to be the same temperature as the water in the tank so that your corals and your fish don't get stressed. A common question that comes up in the hobby all the time is, what is the best salt to use for my reef tank? My answer to that is, what does your local fish store carry? What are the brands that they always have in the store? They'll usually have a decent selection of salts, and the only reason I say something from your local fish store is not only are you supporting your local fish store, but if there's an emergency, you know that they will have the salt that you need. I used Aquaforest salt for a long time. Great salt, not knocking it, but my local fish stores in the area do not carry it, and getting it mailed is kind of a pain sometimes. So I just like to go ahead and get it from my local fish store. In this case, I use Fritz Blue Box. 3 things I like about Fritz Blue Box are, it mixes in the alkalinity range that I keep my tanks, and that's important. I keep my tanks between 8 and 8.5 DKH when it comes to alkalinity. It mixes quickly, and again, my LFS carries Fritz products. Oh, and one more thing I just thought of. So 4 things about Fritz salts, and I'm not sure what other companies do this, but I had a question. It seemed like I was getting a higher alkalinity out of the salt mix, and I wanted to check that. So if you email Fritz the batch number that you get on your box of salt, they can tell you the exact measurements for all of the elements: calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, all that stuff, and it's so convenient. So the customer service with Fritz is also awesome. So 1 cup will do about 2 gallons. So in this case, I'm gonna do about 9 cups of salt. You never wanna just dump it all in. I usually spread it out, and then I keep tally on my hand. So that's 1. I let that mix for a couple hours as per the recommendation from Fritz. Please use the mixing instructions that the salt you are using provides you. A lot of the salt is natural and a lot of the salt is synthetic. Those mix differently. So just know what kind of salt you're using and follow those instructions. It will definitely vary from brand to brand. Slowly add each cup of salt and allow the flow to do most of the work. Another thing I like to do right off the bat is, you're gonna get some of the salt that just kind of settles on the bottom instantaneously. I like to take this long scraper that I have and just kind of mix up at the bottom. Just kind of get that stuff agitated off the bottom, especially when you're mixing 20 to however many gallons you're mixing. If it's a larger amount, you're definitely gonna get some of that sediment on the bottom. Just before we start removing the water, I always like to scrape the glass. This is a good time to get the water column dirty if you're gonna disturb anything, as you'll be taking out some of that water anyway. Now I run filter floss and will remove anything that's soiled and replace that with fresh floss. If you've got any filter media, this is a good time to replace that, empty the skimmer cup, all of that stuff as needed. At this point, the water you've been mixing is probably ready to go. I always check salinity and temperature before I start the water change. If the salinity is low, like it is here, add salt until you achieve your desired salinity. In this case, I shoot for 1.026 like most reef keepers. I know if you've got a fish-only system, you can go a little bit lower than that. Most of us have tubes lying around, just random hoses and things like that we've used in the hobby. I use this tubing from a sand siphon kit that I have. I've found this the most convenient way to remove water from the lagoon tank, because I can actually suck out any detritus or anything on the rocks as well. And this is also a tip I picked up from BRS. If you've got an acrylic rod or tweezers, it's good to move that around the sand bed to free up any detritus, and then you can kind of use 2 hands to maneuver the tubing, and so anything you stir up can be sucked out by the tubing at the same time. It's just a convenient way to stir up any debris that's in the sand bed and not make a huge mess. So why not siphon the sand instead? Well, I do, but I only do this like once a month, and this wasn't one of those times. So once the water has been removed, it is time to replace it with clean water that we just mixed. Double check the salinity and temperature one more time. If you're cheap like me and use something silly like an old milk jug as a pitcher, go for it. Maybe someday I'll upgrade this thing. For the frag tank, I have a cheap pond pump that I use to get the new water back into the tank, and that's its only job, is to pump new water back into that tank. It's a little bit too powerful for the lagoon, so I find it easier just to do it by hand. And once we've got the water all replaced, I turn the pumps back on and get everything back moving again. It's important to replace the exact exact same amount of water that you've taken out. Otherwise, your ATO may go a little bit crazy off the bat. So it's a good idea to turn the ATO off, make sure you've got that sensor all up to snuff, and then turn it back on once you've figured that out. Otherwise, it's gonna kick on if you don't have enough water, and your salinity is gonna get all out of whack. So now we're left with the glass. That's the most important part, right? The outside of the glass. You wanna make sure that during your water change, you can make that outside glass as pristine as possible. In the past, I've used RODI to clean the outside of the glass, so I just spray it on there and then wipe it off with a paper towel or whatever. But I was recently introduced to Fritz Glass Cleaner. This is not a plug for them. I used it a couple times, and this stuff is great. It smells a little weird, but it's aquarium safe, and it doesn't streak, and it leaves the glass looking awesome. Some people I've heard use Windex or other like household cleaning products. I do not recommend that at all. I wouldn't want any kind of household chemicals near my reef tanks. We invest way too much money into these systems and the corals, not worth the risk. I would much rather do RODI water or something that's reef safe. Now all you gotta do is just sit back and enjoy. Your corals will appreciate you. So why do we do water changes? Well, for newbies, the main thing is nutrient control, especially on smaller tanks. So nutrient control, it's also a good way to replace any elements that were consumed by the corals. We're talking the big guys like alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium. Smaller systems like the lagoon can benefit from a weekly or bi-weekly water change depending on how nutrient dense your system is. On larger systems, I mean, when you're looking at a 200, 300, 400 gallon reef tank, that's a lot of water to do a water change with, and that can really add up quickly. It's an inconvenience for a lot of people, so what happens is you get a dosing pump and you make sure that all of those major elements are replaced and the water just stays the same. It's pretty amazing, you know, so on some of these larger systems, if you go check out my Epcot dive I did in Disney World, went on a backstage tour of that whole thing. I asked, hey, how often do you guys do water changes in this tank? And they said they haven't done a water change since like 1980 or something like that. So it's the same water. As long as you're replenishing those elements, you should be good to go. And if you really want to get into it, search the Triton method on YouTube and you'll find a bunch of information about no water changes. As always, if you have any questions, if you felt like I left anything out, because I probably did, go ahead and leave that in the comments section below and I'll be sure to answer your question. I've been checking in with Scott Crow and it looks like the Superstore is very, very close to opening, which is awesome. But at the same time, I'm a little bummed because air travel isn't super recommended right now. I don't know that I would feel comfortable doing it right now. And I did the math, and it's like a 17-hour drive from St. Louis to Rhode Island, so that's probably not gonna happen. It would make for a fun YouTube video, but we'll probably just have to watch from the outside until, you know, it's a little bit safer to fly. With the new store, that means the livestock may be coming back here to the website soon, so be checking osachoice.com. And as always, you can go to the website for any of your reefing needs. Ocean State Aquatics is a great partner of the channel, and I cannot wait to see the new Superstore when it opens. That's it for me this week. I was on the fence on whether or not I wanted to put out a video this week. It's just been kind of a mental roller coaster, but at the same time, I feel like these YouTube videos kind of give me a release so that I don't have to think about what's going on in the world right now. So thank you for giving me that opportunity and watching. I hope you pick something up from this. If you didn't and you just, you know, are watching to see what happens here at the end, there's nothing that happens here at the end. This is usually where I ramble on, like more video suggestions come up. So if you're new to the channel, you can binge other content. Be safe out there. And if you like this video, go ahead and support by liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell notification so you're notified whenever I upload new videos. Thank you. Bye-bye.